I think Hamari relationship is like anyone's relationship, right? One is like a morning person, which is me. So I wake up early. He gets up a little later. He likes his coffee. So if I have to really impress him or get something out of him, I'll make coffee and take it to him in bed. We both like cooking a lot, so we cook together, spend a lot of time in the kitchen cooking. My name is Utkarsh Saxena. I practice law at the Supreme Court of India, and I'm also a trained development economist. So I work with governments and multilaterals on economic policy projects. I'm doing a PhD in development economics at the University of Oxford right now. I come from a Fauji family. My father was an Indian naval officer. My mother was first a school teacher. She's also done a PhD. I have a younger sister. We're a bit of an academic, sort of nerdy family. All of us have studied a bit. When I was 12, 13, there were two things happening. One, I started having crushes on the boys in my class, the partners in my class partner, and I realized that something was different. While all my other friends were having crushes on girls. So I immediately knew that I was a bit different. And second, because I was a bit different, my mannerisms were different. You know, people would start calling me names, start bullying me, start teasing me, that I figured that they're noticing something about me that I don't know. And I think both of these experiences made me realize that I'm different, that the world was made in one way, and I was made in this different way. And it was a very scary thought for a 12-year-old kid. I felt scared, I felt lonely, I was always terrified that my family and friends would find out about me and, you know, abandon me or leave me, and it was a big fear in my life. And there was also a lot of shame. It takes you a while to accept this about yourself. So you lie to yourself, you pretend, you know, you deceive yourself, you deceive people around you just so that you can fit into society. And, you know, just like you try to hide your mannerisms, you try to hide who you are. And it's a very long, lonely struggle inside your head. You know, I couldn't speak to my teachers, my friends, counselors, no one about this. There was no conversation around mental health. I was probably struggling with depression as a young kid and I didn't even know about it. So even though I realized about my sexuality when I was very young, I really took my time because I didn't think that my family or friends or society were ready at the time. This is the 2000s when there was a lot of hate and phobia around it. And so it was a very slow and gradual process. First, my sister, she figured it out on her own in like 2009, 2010 because, you know, sisters are clever like that. I told my mother in 2015, 2016. And I could already sense that, you know, she was saying very positive things and her views were changing. So I felt very comfortable telling her, and it was a very warm and emotional coming out. We talked about my childhood years and what it was like growing up. And she obviously felt bad about what I was going through alone, but then has ever since been, you know, a big pillar of strength. And then I took a few more years to tell my father in 2018. And he was also very supportive and it was also very emotional. And I think each time I told my mom and my dad, they basically said, "Pehle kyun nahi bataya? You know, you could have told us this so much earlier." So I'm very lucky that way that my family has been so supportive. And I think for a lot of families, you know, when it's something that's happening in other people's households, it's different. But when it's your own kids, you have to come to terms with it. And it's so much, it's very hard to let go of your children. So a lot of people usually I've heard from have been pleasantly surprised sometimes by the reactions that they've received. But that was the first coming out, which was more internal, it was more close, it was in safe spaces in our families. Growing up was difficult, it was lonely, especially when I went to college. I think I was a bit lost and adrift and trying to find myself. And that's when I met Kotya. I was in third year of college, he was in first year of college. He'd come to audition for the debating society, so that's how we met. We were both a bit nerdy, geeky, we were into politics, news, current affairs, and that's how we started bonding. And immediately realized that what we had was something quite special. I'd never experienced this before, he had never experienced this before. And in some ways, you know, the first time that we admitted to someone that we were queer or that we were gay was actually to each other. as this relationship was growing. So in some ways it was like any other relationship in college. We used to have late night conversations on landline phones back in the day. We were a little geekier, would talk more about sort of news, politics, went around a lot all over the city. In some ways it was easier to date because my parents didn't think I was going out with a girl. They thought I was with my friend, my best friend, so it was actually easier in some ways. But in one big way, of course, it was different, which was that nobody knew about us. Nobody knew about our relationship. We kept it very quiet and hidden. Despite all of this, and despite the fact that it was a criminal offense and there was so much phobia and mockery in society, the fact that I had this relationship and that we had each other and I had Kotia just made things easier. Even if the entire world was against us, we felt like at least we had this relationship and we had each other, and that just made life a little easier. We also realized that we got really lucky to have found this companionship and it made life easier for us. But for a lot of people, it's not that simple, and it's a struggle to be queer and growing single in India. And therefore wanted to do a little bit for this movement. That's why Kotia and I decided to file this petition for marriage equality, because it was important for us to be able to convert our relationship and love into a relationship that's socially recognized and accepted and embraced. And we know that's the same for others as well, which is why this petition is important. There was like a second coming out that happened when Kotia and I decided to file the petition, because then it was going to be us coming out to the entire world and our families coming out to their social circles. You know, my father's in the forge, he's in the military, he was in the military, him coming out to his forgy friends. And then there was this whole conversation on, log kya kahenge, does it have to be so public? What will it mean for the family? Will there be a lot of scrutiny? Will you be safe? And that was also a long and a little difficult conversation. It's anyway difficult to file a petition, so I was going through a lot, and then I had to also sort of be there for my family members and support them through this. But in the end, they've all come around, have been very positive, are now incredibly proud. Gay marriage, equality, all these terms. I think for me the true day of equality will be when it's no longer a gay marriage, but it's just marriage. When it's no longer a queer love story, but it's just a love story. That when people look at Kotia and me, they're not thinking of a gay couple. Similarly, queer families. I think queer families will be like any other families, and we aspire for the day when people will realize that kids growing up in these families will be like, there could be like the kids growing up in their own families, that they'll be as naughty, as mischievous, as happy, as complicated, as messy families like their own families.